out-of-the-box security conference. Very good conference. Yesterday, my good friend Uncle O was here. Now he's not here anymore, so he's sending his good friend Uncle Muniandi. So, Doctor non-Subakin not here. He God knows where. It's okay. He got two other big fellows down here. They're coming all the way from Sweden, that cold country, got big sauna on it. So, without further ado, let us put our hands together for the fellows from the Pirate Bay. Mr. Prokop and Mr. Diawo. Take it away.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Frederick. I'm from the Pirate Bay.
And I'm Peter. I'm also from the Pirate Bay. We're here to talk about our website and file sharing system. And just some background about us. We're from Sweden, both of us. We're just turned 30, even though it doesn't show. And essentially, we've been working with the Pirate Bay for the last 5 years. And the difference between most of you guys and us is that we're doing it as a hobby, while most of other people in here probably work with it. Today's discussion is called How to Dismantle a Billion-Dollar Industry. But that's what we've been accused of. But to be fair, and because IFPI is here today, which is one of our big haters, I guess, it's not really a billion-dollar industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And actually, we're not doing it just to dismantle it, we're doing it as a hobby. And that's just because it's more fun that way, I think. But to be honest, it's not just a hobby, it's just that you can't just dismantle an industry like this. You're going to get sued. And we've been sued by the Swedish government, and we have a court case coming next year. But that's not a big problem, because we'll probably win in the end. Probably. But yeah, let's go back and talk about us a bit, who we are and why we do this. Both of us, I think, have a background within the demo scene and hacking scene.
Yep.
I started cracking games on Amiga when I was like 12, 13 years old in the early 90s, and I think you have some similar background.
Yeah, I started copying games on the Commodore 64 with a double-deck tape recorder back in the 80s. So it's a long history of copyright infringement.
Yeah, I didn't actually know what copyright infringement meant back then. It was more or less the same thing I was doing all the time, the same thing I'm doing right now, and it didn't really mean anything to me. It wasn't this big crime. Everybody did it. I was too young to understand that it was wrong, and now I'm older, I understand that it isn't wrong. So it's how you want to look at it. We started something called Piratbyrån, or not us. We're part of the team who started it, but Piratbyrån is an organization in Sweden which was started because there was something called Anti-Piratbyrån, which was the anti-piracy agency. So in order for them to have an anti-piracy agency, we felt that there was need for a piracy agency, someone who would actually speak for the pirates of the world, and especially in Sweden. Every time the anti-piracy agency wrote something in the news, there was no discussions about if it was right or wrong. It was always, what they said was the truth. So we felt that there was a need for someone to talk why piracy is good. And one of the things that we did was to start Piratbyrån. We started Piratbyrån in 2002, I think. And Pirate Bay was one of those projects that Piratbyrån did to put the focus on why piracy is good. We also hosted the Polar Pirate Prize, which was a prize award show, a big gala, where we gave out, I think, prizes to BitTorrent for the best file sharing protocol. We decided which ISP was the best for pirates, and a lot of those stuff. We also had some demonstrations in Sweden. Typically in Sweden, you have a 1st of May demonstration, which is essentially the workers go out and demonstrate on the 1st of May. And we demonstrated, and we had some big rules saying 100 megabits is welfare, and everybody needs 100 megabits. And in Sweden today, most people have access to 100 megabits, and we take full credit for that. It has nothing to do with anyone else but us. Also, one of the key issues we had was also that the internet needs to be neutral. It was very big discussions back then, as today, about internet being a neutral ground where the companies are not liable, the ISPs aren't liable for what happens, and that it should only be an access to an internet and not to a sensitive internet. But to go back to Pirate Bay, we needed to have a file sharing network in Sweden because there was none. At this time, there was one big torrent site, which was called Supernova, but they mainly had international content. And with Piratbyrån, we wanted more Swedish, local, Scandinavian content. So we started a big library of some sort, and that is Pirate Bay. We even have a Malaysian screenshot here today. Wow. This is the website. Pirate Bay.
We don't know it.
Yeah, so maybe you want to talk about what the Pirate Bay is. Okay, no. So Pirate Bay is essentially two things. It's a website where you can upload torrent files, which are small pieces of information about files you have on your computer. You can upload them to Pirate Bay, and we index them like any other search engine. And you have commenting systems. It's a normal web portal. But Pirate Bay is also a BitTorrent tracker, which is the big difference between Pirate Bay and most other torrent sites. We have our own file sharing network. And this file sharing network is one of the reasons why we're so huge, I think, because it's the biggest file sharing network ever in history. We're, I think, three times bigger than Kazaa ever was at their peak. So that's quite interesting. The first site, the first Pirate Bay version was actually in Swedish only, which was a problem because we noticed after, I think, a year that we had like 80% of the users was not Swedish, and the most downloaded torrent was actually a Swedish language course. Quite interesting. So, this is something Freddie can talk about.
Yeah, this is one of the early setups of the Pirate Bay. You can see my old laptop acting as a tracker, and above the laptop on rolls of tape to keep them cool is a motherboard in a motherboard box, just thrown together from spare parts. And this was the entire website back in 2004 sometime. We were running on 4 servers. The red firewall is actually being reinstalled with Linux to serve web pages. And the ugly looking box down low has is a database. So we didn't really have any money for servers. We just took whatever we had available.
This is actually not the first setup. This is one of the first, but this is the one in Gothenburg, I think. Right?
Yeah, this is one in Gothenburg. The Pirate Bay originally started out in Mexico on a Mexican server where Anacata, the third guy from Pirate Bay, was working at the time. And it was actually hosted on the company's web server where he worked. And they had a 128K internet connection that actually got overloaded from all the traffic.
We also had big problems in Mexico because nobody actually bribed the electric company, so we didn't have power for 3 or 4 days sometimes.
Yeah.
So we moved to Gothenburg. I think we have some more pictures. This is the web server.
This is how I build servers.
So Supernova, which was the big competitor, however you want to say, was shut down, and we started growing quite rapidly because we were the only website that didn't actually shut down when the media industry sent lawyers after us. So we decided, like, instead of shutting down, we're going to respond to these letters, and we're going to, just keep growing. And just before there was a big raid, this was the setup we had, which was a bit better than the first setup. I think this was in Stockholm.
Yeah, this is the service in Stockholm. This picture is taken like 1 month before the raid. And as you see, we had some better servers, not being built by me. We had actually grown into 13 servers, whereof 6 of these are actual trackers for handling the BitTorrent protocol, whereas the others are for dynamic web content.
I don't know. Do everybody know what a tracker does and how it works? I would guess so today, but still, it's a good question. So, as I said, one of the big things that made us bigger than most other sites was that we ignored the legal threats coming. The other torrent sites that was shut down was actually shut down because they were scared of lawyers, and most of the sites were run by 16, 17-year-old kids, and getting a fancy lawyer letter saying you're going to be sued for $100 million or something scares most people. We, on the other end, were quite stupid, I think, and stubborn. So instead, we replied to them, saying something like this. I just like this picture of this cute polar bear. So we got the stupid letters, mostly from US lawyers, saying that we're breaking the MCA. And of course, the MCA is an American law, so it doesn't actually apply in Sweden or anywhere outside of the US. But most American lawyers don't care about that, but we care about that. So we sent stupid letters back. This is an example. This has been quoted quite often. That, we tried telling them that Sweden is not part of the United States, just to make sure that the lawyers knew, because you can't actually be sure that they do know stuff like that. So we responded telling we have polar bears in the streets, and that's a bigger problem than copyright infringement in Sweden. This is one of my favorite legal threats received from a German company called Linotype. They were mad because they found a torrent on Pirate Bay linking to fonts that they made. And to be very Pirate Bay-ish in our answer, we responded using all of their fonts. And yeah, that's the thing we do. And we didn't hear from them again. This is another quite interesting, this is a real legal threat. This is a company in the UK called Web Sheriff, which is this clown who doesn't really know what he's doing. But he's protecting your rights online, and he has this big flash animation on his website saying he's like the sheriff of the internet. And yeah, this is a picture of Frederick. I don't know, do you like it?
Really, really horrible picture. I like that.
And the interesting thing about when he sent this to us and he published it on his own website was that he actually stole the picture from a Swedish newspaper. So it's a copyright infringement from his side, taking the picture, which is, yeah, it's interesting as well. Let's see here, where we are. And responding to the legal threats in this way, there's a lot of them on the Pirate Bay website that's published. You can go see them afterwards. Makes people sending them quite anxious about how to shut us down, because the problem they had with us was that we weren't taking the words serious enough, according to them. So they sent private investigators after us, which is really stupid if you do something online. I don't know if they're gonna, what are they going to find? If we're sitting by the computers? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I guess the private investigator going after me in Gothenburg got to see a lot of good bars, a lot of late nights, but probably not so much evidence gathering.
no. And at this time also, Anakata, which is the third guy from Pirate Bay, we're only 3 people doing this, he was working all day long. So for 5 weeks, some private investigator was sitting in his car outside his job. He never left his office, so this guy's been sitting in a car for 5 weeks. Just really, really funny. And actually, IFPI, which is the International Federation of Photographic Industry, I think one of them is here today, still trying to find out what we're doing. This is
a picture from PRQ, the co-location facility me and Anakata started a bit before Pirate Bay. This is a picture after the raid, when they took all the servers.
Can you tell more about the raid? What happened?
Yeah, I got a phone call like 10 a.m. in the morning. It was Anakata. He said, there's police officers at our office. So could you go down to the co-location facility and get rid of the incriminating evidence? So
That had nothing to do with Pirate Bay. I just actually have
no. So I started walking out the door, and then it hit me. It might be the Pirate Bay. So I went back into my laptop, started a full backup of the site. So, and then I left. And when I got to the co-location facility, there was a lot of police officers waiting there, civilian clothing. So when I come in, I asked them, who are you? What are you doing here? And they were kind of back at me, who are you? What are you doing here? And I'm like, hey, I asked first. You're at my place. Who are you? What are you? After 5 minutes of this, they actually said, okay, we're from the police. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? And they went, no, now it's your turn to say who you are. And I argued a bit more with them. And finally, I told them my name. And the police officer went up, oh, we've been looking for you.
Well, what actually happened was there was 65 police officers that raided, I think, in 12 places.
12, okay.
Like in your old apartment that you didn't live in.
Yeah, that
And I was sleeping at home, and I had no idea what was going on, and they didn't know about me. And he didn't call me, which is stupid, but they arrested, they knew there was 3 guys in Pirate Bay, because that was, they heard in the media there was 3 guys. So they took Frederick and Godfrey, which they knew about, and they also took our lawyer, probably because of the legal threats. But they questioned him and they took your DNA, I think.
Yeah.
All of your DNA, which is good evidence when it comes to
DNA for online crimes.
Yeah.
It really solves a lot of them.
And also, it was quite interesting during the questioning. I think Anna-Katta actually admitted to killing the Swedish Prime Minister when he was 2 years old. That was all of the admission they actually got from us.
Yeah.
But what happened to the Pirate Bay during the raid, or more interesting, what happened with the internet during the raid? This is a graph of the Swedish traffic, and if you see on Wednesday, Pirate Bay went down, and you see everything just went down. And then you see that 10 gigabits of traffic is actually missing from the Swedish internet traffic. And that was when we were small. And this means only that the peers couldn't get new peers, so they're still sharing files. They're just not getting new peers. So it's much more than just this traffic. This is the one that got lost in like a day. But the thing that was really interesting was that we were expecting some sort of confrontation with the police. Not that it would be of this level, and 65 of them was really stupid because they raided not only the place where Pirate Bay was hosted, but also PRQ, the internet provider that got created.
180 customer servers.
Yeah.
So, among them, a lot of companies, and also
it was one of the servers was actually affected by like the freedom of speech and act in Sweden. And the prosecutors knew about it, and the police knew about it. They just ignored it and just took servers, even though they're protected by the basic law in Sweden and all of that. And the interesting thing was that even though we had pictures on the website saying where Pirate Bay actually were, and we didn't talk about this before, but we moved from Gothenburg to Stockholm because we didn't have enough bandwidth in Gothenburg. And during that time, we actually had a GPS monitor when you were driving.
yeah, we had a GPS map while I was driving from Gothenburg to Stockholm. That plotted out the entire way, all the way to the co-location facility. So it shouldn't have been that hard to find it.
No, so they knew the facility where we had the servers. They had pictures of the guys, they had pictures of the servers. They knew Fredrik was driving the car because someone actually reported to the police because he was going too fast. Because it was a GPS and said current speed, and it was more than twice the limit, I think.
Only 181 kph.
Yeah. And the interesting thing now that happened was that the police was forced by someone to do this raid. And this is a picture from the Swedish television, the biggest news report in Sweden called Aktuellt. And they confirmed, like, the journalist there actually found out that the US government was behind pressuring the Swedish government to take action against the Pirate Bay. The thing that happened was that Hollywood industry, especially MPA, which is the Motion Picture Association, they went to the White House and talked to them and told them that they had a problem with the Pirate Bay because we didn't listen to their threats. So they forced Sweden to send their justice minister, I think, and some other people from the Justice Department to the US and talk to them about the problem called the Pirate Bay. So probably they were sitting in the White House talking about our stupid nicknames or something. Quite interesting. So the Swedish State Department, the Justice Department of Sweden, they refused to agree and admit to the wrongdoings that they were actually forced because it's illegal in Sweden for ministers to tell their employees what to do. So they cannot say to the police that you have to go after this entity. They can only say that you have to take care about crime on
prioritize.
Yeah, right. For instance. But we were kind of the elephant in Sweden. There was one copyright infringement case in all Sweden. That was the Pirate Bay. So say to them, like, you have to prioritize copyright infringement crimes, especially hosting, file-sharing networks, was saying, go after the Pirate Bay. So what happened in Sweden when the US actually admitted to pressuring Sweden was that people were really outraged, and there was some big demonstrations. This is outside the government, the Riksdagen in Sweden, which is the government parliament. Yeah. So this is over 1,000 people, which is really rare in Sweden, that a lot of people, especially young people, go out and protest for something like this. And what happened a couple of months earlier, before the raid, there was a political party started in Sweden, because the whole concept of file sharing is very much always discussed in Sweden. It's very open. The difference between Sweden and the rest of the countries in Scandinavia, for instance, is that everybody admits to file sharing. In Norway, for instance, if you go on a news show, you get your face masked and mosaiced and everything. In Sweden, everybody just admits to it, and all the famous people file share. It's a really big thing.
We have 2 million file sharers in a 9 million country.
Yeah, 2 million. We have 2 million file sharers on our network from Sweden. So it's very much a public thing. So a political party was formed, which is called the Pirate Party. We have nothing to do with that. To be honest, we don't actually have anything to do with them. We think they're a bit stupid, but yeah. They're still quite big in Sweden. And what happened was that they got thousands of new members because of the raid. So they got a lot of attention in the press, and they're actually the third largest youth party in Sweden right now. So they're getting governmental support and everything. At this demonstration, however, there was not only us and the Pirate Party participating, it was all of the youth parties in Sweden. Like all of the parties in parliament, their youth divisions actually showed up and protested against the government, telling them to give us back the servers. I love this picture because it shows that this is a generational question. We can't live without our servers, and maybe the government can't live without the fax machines. A lot of people pressed charges against the government because this is wrong. You can't do what you did towards us. So they have the justice minister got about 800 police complaints against him, personal complaints that he was accused of doing something called minister coup, which is one of the most it's one of the baddest things you can do as minister in Sweden. So it's just very interesting. And I have a small video clip. I don't know if the sound's working, but let's try. This is from a movie called Good Copy, Bad Copy, and they, in their turn, has taken some material from a movie called Steal This Film. So it's actually 2 movies cut into one. And it's a guy called Dan Glickman, which is, I think, the CEO of Motion Picture Association, which is essentially all of the companies in Hollywood. And I think you're in it as well. So let's see.
We just have to try to make it as difficult and as tedious as possible, and we have to let people know there are consequences if they're caught.
I got a phone call from someone that there was a lot of policemen there, and I asked, what the fuck? So I went there with a cab, and the police actually stopped the cab with lights flashing and all.
And they wanted to know who I was, and I kept asking, who are you? And they, who are you? And after a bit of who are you, they finally, yeah, we're police officers, we're here on investigations.
They first asked some stuff about the BitTorrent protocol. Then they asked some stuff about the Pirate Bay, my involvement in it.
The obvious goal of the police was to get the Pirate Bay offline and get the internet supplier PRQ offline.
Well, we certainly wanted the local authorities to know that a replication of copyrighted material was happening and being distributed worldwide. You've got to go after the folks if they're actually breaking the law and use local law enforcement authorities to do it. That was a decision they made, but we talked to them.
They think that the US jurisdiction stretches around the world. It's illegal according to US law, but it's not illegal according to Swedish law. The users really appreciated that we talk back to them, tell them that you don't decide over the internet, we, the users, do.
Damn it, now I'm so scared I miss my pants. Where should I send the invoice for leaving them?
First I see the Pirate Bay as a sort of organized civil disobedience to simply force a change in the current copyright laws and the general copyright climate.
There was a growing movement, particularly among younger people in Europe and in the United States, about collective is free, free is right, sharing of information should be unrestricted. You know, if that comes into conflict with copyright, so be it.
After 3 days, the servers were back up and most of the backups restored. Now the site is virtually impossible to take down.
It was quite an eye-opener for them that there's such a large base of popular support for file sharing the general copyright issues.
I think in Sweden especially, it's become kind of a cause célèbre. There was even a political party that was created because of this.
Yeah, so that's from good copy, bad copy. Very good movie, not only because we're in it, but it's actually a good film. And it's free to download on Pirate Bay and most other sites. So as Fredrik said, the site was back after 3 days. I think the first day we partied, so we didn't get the site up. Yep. And it took another day to...
The second day we got the new servers up and running. The third day I installed the software. So it took 3 days.
And the thing that happened, we actually got the site up like an hour before the demonstration. So I remember Fredrik talking in the demonstration, and everybody was like sharing that the site was back up because it was such a big victory for our site. Nobody had the idea that we were actually coming back online. We told all the media that asked us, is the site down forever? We said, no, we're going to be back. I was holding a talk at a conference in Denmark at the time, the day after the raid. Usually it's like 100 people there listening to the talk, and all of a sudden there's like 600 people. Probably 300 of them were journalists from all imaginable parts of the world, and it was really weird time. And nobody believed us when we said, like, of course we're going to be back online soon. Oops. Linux actually crashed. No, crashed. Oh wow. Never happened before. Okay, so you talk about it, I reboot.
If you had run Slackware, this would never have happened.
Well, it's Ubuntu, it's stable enough. Stuff happens, that's okay. We were talking about the raid when we came back. So
Okay. As I said, I was starting to make a backup copy of all the files when I went out the door, because it might be the Pirate Bay. And it was quite fortunate that I did, because it turned out to be the Pirate Bay that was in trouble.
I took a copy as well when I found out. I got an email from the ISP saying like someone is inside the facility right now. They're going after the Pirate Bay. We're stalling them, but you should take a copy of everything. And I have this really cool screenshot where it says, where I'm copying the last file from the backups, and it says all of a sudden connection reset by peer. And I know someone physically took out the network cable at that time.
Yeah. And I refused to tell the police where I lived, so they couldn't take my laptop with the backups. So fortunately, we had a backup, very, very fresh, just a few hours that it took for them to arrest me and to find the servers.
And also we got most of the torrents back from users and from other torrent sites, which is probably a very good solution for backup if you haven't tried it. Give out all your code to everybody.
So we got about 90% of all the torrent files restored within 5 days. So it's
good feed. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, I'm running Spotify, so yeah, don't complain.
And this is where Peter lives.
And it's outside my apartment. Let's see. So a little bit of Sweden while we wait. So don't look. Whoa, there it is. So
Screen fucking.
this. Oh, my God. We're not actually professionals. You might know this. Try that. We had a problem with this before, so I think it's probably fucking. Let's try this. Okay, let's go from here. This is, we put this logo back on Pirate Bay. First we had this logo with our usual ship, which has a cannon, and we had a small sign saying Hollywood, and we were shooting cannons at them. But then some really skilled graphic artists, we don't have a lot of them in our team, I can say, just as we don't have a lot of professional speakers in our team, made this really cool Phoenix logo, which is one of our favorites all time. We're going to talk more about our cool logos later. This is the only official press release or only official comment about the raid, and it's. I was blogging during the time, and this is what I blogged, which is what essentially I sent the link to the MPA officials and so on, and it's stats about how often Pirate Bay is down and why. And Frederick, which those of you who know him know that he can get really, really drunk. So sometimes we've actually been down for 3 or 4 days because Fredrik actually was drunk. Anakata, he had a cold once and couldn't go to the facility where we hosted the servers, and Fredrik and I wasn't around. So we were down for 7 days, and the Swedish and the US government use all of Hollywood and 65 police officers steal all of our servers and actually take people in for questioning, including our lawyers. Then we're only down 3 days. It was really annoying for our opponents to actually see this, I guess. And the thing that this says probably about the internet, is that the internet will not listen to reason. I love this picture as well. It's from a festival in Sweden. A friend of mine found a tree where someone actually carved this in for some reason. But the internet is something more than just another company or something. It's because it's global, because it's uncensored today. It's really easy to get your message out. It's really easy to be uncensored today, and we're fighting for that freedom, and that's why it was so important for us to actually get back online and not just close down, because it's more than just about us. It's to show that the internet is a new force that you have to talk about, and you have to realize how it works, and you have to accept that you cannot just shut something down on the internet. If someone wants it back, it will be back online. Just as copying is also a fact, you cannot say no to file sharing today. If you say no or yes to file sharing, it's like saying no or yes to having the color green in your, in your conscience. It's stupid, and nobody can force other people to stop file sharing because it's already a fact. And we've stopped discussing file sharing if it's good or bad, because it doesn't matter. We think file sharing is good, and we're quite sure of it. And a lot of other people think it's bad. But the fact is that there will always be file sharing. People want to file share, so talking about it as a variable that you can decide yes or no is just stupid. And there's this really good quote about that Gandhi said, and it's first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And we think we're somewhere about the fight stage, and we're going to win. What happened because of the raid was that we just got more users, we started growing, the pirate party started growing, as we said before, and most of the people in Sweden started talking about file sharing like every day. And there was an election in Sweden that year as well, so it was one of the biggest topics in the election, was file sharing. And all of the representatives of all of the parties said we have to make file sharing. We have to stop going after file sharers in Sweden. We have to stop chasing youth generation, which is essentially what they did do when they won, but never.
Actually, the party that were the ruling party at the time of the raid, they lost.
Yeah. That was the justice minister got kicked. We had actually a logo of him, you know, with out written all over his shirt. And we want to talk about technologies and evolution. And it's, you can't go back when it comes to evolution. Nobody wants to go back when it comes to file sharing or any other sort of sharing online. And we wanted to show a point, and we wanted to prove a point with the whole discussion about this. I think we have a clip here again, so hopefully it doesn't crash this time.
Raised the Pirate Bay moved many of its servers abroad. They say they don't even know where they are. It's part of the cat and mouse game that they play with police. But at least one server stayed in Sweden, and it's in the vaults of this bank, where they hope it'll remain safe.
I'm going to change quick for it. Ignore that note for a while. So what we did to prove the point was that we moved all of our servers, except one, abroad from Sweden. So first we moved to Holland because we had some friends there that could help us with the servers. But then we started moving servers around. So we actually gave servers to friends of ours, and they in their turn got co-location for them in other places and set up tunnels so we don't know what the actual IP on the end. And then we have a load balancer, which is at the same facility, the same rack as the servers that were raided. But we have some small
Dymo text.
yeah, Dymo text if the police comes again, so they're going to be really angry. We have some, I think we have some binary files, right? Encrypted binary.
Greetings to the prosecutors and stuff on the actual load balancer that's located at in the same rack, at the same place as the pictures from the setup before.
And if you want to have fun, you can actually check the reverse of our IP. I think it's still the same as after the raid, yeah. So I'm not going to tell you what that is, but it's quite funny. Also, I don't know if we should actually say this, but we have a file on the load balancer, which is the only server that they can actually find, which is called childporn.jpg, and it's a picture of some children reading a porn magazine, so they're going to be disappointed when they open that. But we like to talk with them quite a bit. But let's go further. And this is one of the logos that we changed. We have some doodles, just like Google have doodles sometimes. And this is our favorite doodle of all time, I guess, because it's so well made. I think this is when we celebrated 10 million peers.
Yeah.
And 1 million torrents, actually. So this is 10 million peers. This is last year, I think.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, something like that. So we do more than just the political stuff. We have a lot of fun, which, because we're not a company, because we don't have, we don't go for profits or whatever, we try to have more fun instead. So we do stupid stuff that probably works for us as advertising.
Yeah.
So we tried selling ourselves on eBay, or actually a party with us that we wanted people to come to. I think this is the logo. It's quite clever. I really love this one.
eBay actually took down all 3 of our auctions because apparently it's illegal to sell people on eBay,
Yeah.
even if it's yourself.
So actually we didn't want to sell people.
Yeah. One more thing about this logo that I find just a
He
fun
loves it
fact
so much.
is that after we had this up for a day, an article actually got slashdotted about how to make your own pirate island picture, where someone made a guide how to make an island like this from scratch in Photoshop.
And the guy who actually made this, he makes most of our doodles right now. I think he used like 2 weeks to make it or something.
Yeah.
He actually draw it on paper, then scanned it and colored it and so on. It's really weird. So what happened on eBay? Yeah, we wanted to sell party with us because we needed to raise some funds to buy some new machines. And we had a really fair deal that someone could come to Sweden, buy us beer, pay their own trip, and their own trip back, and their own stay, and all of our beers, I think, and their own. Yep. And they wouldn't get anything besides giving us money for it, right? Yeah. It's a good deal. But, well, eBay, I think they were pissed about the logo, because they couldn't do anything about it. We just moved one letter and colored it, so there's nothing to be pissed about. And it had a lot of visitors on those auctions. I think one of them was actually $15,000 after just a couple of hours. So they closed it down and said it was illegal. Then we tried selling a shirt that said, I paid a shitload of money to get drunk with the Pirate Bay guys, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt and a hangover. They closed that down as well for some reason, and they never responded, of course, being eBay. Yeah, so other stunts we've done that probably is why people know about us is that we tried buying a country. This is something we never knew that would go to be that big. There's a country, micronation, outside the UK, which is called Sealand, which is an old platform. And someone actually took over it in the 60s, I think. Yep. And they wanted out, they couldn't go there anymore. It's a crappy place to live, and it's out, in the ocean, not fun. But we thought it would be fun if we could go there and host servers or host parties or do whatever. So we wanted to buy it. They didn't have a set price. We tried raising money for it, so we didn't know how much money they wanted, so we just started a fundraising. We didn't think anybody would actually care. Put up this logo on Pirate Bay, and 2 days later, after we came up with this idea, while I think we were sitting in my apartment eating pizza or something, and said, oh, Sealand's up for sale, maybe we should buy it. And 2 days later, the Prince of Sealand was flown to New York. He was in a show with a lot of the top intellectual property lawyers in the US on CNN, talking about if it's a possibility for the pirate guys to move to Sealand and be free of all copyright laws in the world and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what happened here? Really, really weird.
It just exploded and got enormous.
Yeah. And Freddie is really pissed at me because we raised some money.
And he got drunk and donated it all for saving the rainforest. $18,000.
It was 12. Okay, yeah, after taxes, but yeah, I think it was good. He doesn't care about the rainforest.
Yeah, I do, but
Anacata said it was good because I probably gave a lot of money to the Brazilian government to be even more corrupt. So we all have really different approaches to everything we do. None of us actually votes the same. We have, I don't eat meat, he eats the meat I don't eat, and he doesn't eat anything but meat. So we're really different, but it works out good. Sealand was a really fun project. People still ask today. I think this is 2 years ago, almost.
yeah, so one thing I was surprised over, when doing the Sealand project, I got tons of mail from casino companies wanting to co-sponsor the country for favorable casino laws. That would be fun.
Also, funny side story that we haven't actually told anyone is that this one really weird guy who used to do dialers in the US, those old modem dialers, fooling people to call really expensive numbers. He called up. I don't know. He got my home phone number. I don't even have my home phone number, but he found it somehow and called me in the morning, and I had no idea who the guy was. And he said with this really American accent, like, "You got big balls, guy," and he's like really, really into the whole thing, and he's really serious that we are the perfect guys for his thing that he wants to do. And he starts telling me that we should come to Egypt because he has this big facility where he stores things for governments in all of Africa that they don't want people to find. Like governments taking stuff from their own countries, storing them, and he needs a country. So because the laws all over, even though he can bribe everybody in Africa, it's still not good enough for him. So he wanted to do some projects with us. And he was really scary. And a friend of ours actually went to meet him because he was in Israel at the time. So he went past the border and met him, and he never answered his phone again after that. So there's a lot of crazy things going on. And because, one of the other things that we did, or didn't actually do, but had to do, is the domain things. Because IFPI, who is our main opponent, is here today, we have to talk about the domain we got from someone. IFPI has ifpi.org as their domain name that they use, but they also had ifpi.com. But for some reason, probably because they don't know how the internet works, they didn't actually pay for the domain name, so it expired. And someone bought it, and they had it for like 9 months, had an MP3 download site. It was really funny. And then they gave it to me, like just handed it over to me personally, and I started the International Federation of Pirate Interest on this site. It's IFPI, it's the real IFPI according to me. And they sued me for it, because I'm, according to them, a cyber squatter, I think it's called. Which is kind of interesting because all the rules say if you don't pay for the domain, it's not yours anymore. But they said I stole the domain, just as they say we steal content, which we don't do, of course. They really couldn't grasp it. So they just don't send a letter to us anymore. They go all the way to the top. So they went to WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization. It's part of the UN. And they decide everything on the highest level. So they went there straight up. And I didn't want WIPO to test this case because it says on WIPO's homepage that one of the people one of the organizations they work together with closely is IFPI. So IFPI actually stole my domain for stealing my domain. Yeah, but to be honest and fair, previously they've been really bad at everything else that has with domains to do. They had a really big radio campaign in Sweden where they were talking about schysst musik, which means something like fair music, like it's fair to use it. And they had radio ads, probably paid millions of Swedish, like hundreds of thousands of US dollars to have these radio ads, and they put up ads in newspapers and everything. But the thing is, this word schysst in Swedish, which means fair, it's really hard to spell, apparently. So they got the domain name, which was spelled wrongly. So we bought the domains for like a couple of bucks. We bought the domain names, which had the correct spelling, and pointed them to the music section of Pirate Bay. So we had free ads in the radio and newspaper for our websites, paid for by IFPI. And they also started a campaign which they spent millions of dollars on. It's like one of the most paid for campaigns, I think, called Piracy Kills Music. And they did it in Norway, so the domain name is kind of funny because it says Piracy Kills Music No. Yeah, so it's really, really funny. I don't understand how they were thinking. But of course, we understand how the internet works, and we understood that if they actually do this campaign and successful, they're going to do as they always do and spread it to the rest of the countries nearby. So we bought all the other domain names, like .com, .net, .org, .se, .dk, .fi, all the close countries where they had the same organization. So when they wanted to import it out of Norway, they couldn't because we had the domain names. And it would be really expensive for them to change the name. And if there was some content that still pointed towards Piracy Kills Music, it would be our website. So we never heard about it again. So it's a really cheap solution to stop your competitors, their opponents, by their domain names. Other things we do, because as I said before, we're not a company. We do stuff because we think it's fun. And because we see Pirate Bay as something else than just a website and file network, we also see it as art. It's performance art, according to me. You don't care about art, probably. Nope. So, yeah, I went with the Piratbyrån guys. We actually bought an old Swedish city bus, and not to be confused with the South Park ship bus, and renovated it and drove from Sweden to Italy to an art vinyl called Manifesta, which is one of the top art vinyls in the world. And for some reason, they thought we were cool and fun to have there. So we drove with 23 people in the bus from Sweden, had parties for a couple of days, and it's still there on exhibition. We're moving it out of Italy because we're not too fond of Italy at the time, to Belgrade. So if you're in the area of Serbia, you can come see it. Also, we made a movie of the whole trip, and it's free to download on Pirate Bay. So that's art for free, legally. But another thing that we got quite famous for is that, as you probably noticed, we're quite stupid, quite stubborn, and we don't think that we do anything wrong. Actually, we don't everything we do is legal. But there are some people that do illegal stuff towards us. So for instance, we sued most of the companies, or actually filed criminal complaints towards them for trying to destroy our infrastructure. Maybe you can tell what Media Defender is. What it is.
Yes. Media Defender is an anti-peer-to-peer company. They work by posting fake torrents on websites to confuse the users from the real content. They also have a lot of servers just connecting to BitTorrent users and try to use up all their upload bandwidth. So they have a 10 gigabit connection that they only use to download from BitTorrent networks and just discarding the data they download just to slow BitTorrent uploads.
And what happened was that they started using Pirate Bay quite extensively because we have this big tracking server. And they did it on, they had contracts with all of these companies that you see on up here, saying that they got paid to actually ruin our infrastructure. So we started thinking about this. Isn't this illegal to actually go after your competitors? Because we're not only opponents, we're actually competitors because we do media distribution. They used to have a monopoly for media distribution. So we're competitors. So they're trying to ruin their competitors' infrastructure. That can't be legal. So we reported them to the police and filed criminal complaints against them. And there was some hackers. I don't think they're here today, but they actually broke into Media Defender's system and took all their emails for 9 months. And this is what we use as evidence, because in Sweden we have free evidence use. So even though it's stolen emails or whatever, it's still evidence in Sweden. So we sent in 6,000 emails, I think, to the police as evidence of what they've done. And it was contracts with figures, signed contracts with the people in Sweden who signed them, all of this material. And Media Defender, I think they dropped their stock, the rates. They lost like 95% of their value in the stock market.
Yeah, they put the hackers put up. They call themselves Media Defender Defenders, and they took all the 6,500 emails and posted them on the Pirate Bay for everyone to see. And the funny part, we actually, even though, okay, so they posted all the emails, and the Media Defender started to defend itself, saying, no, we didn't have a leak, it must have been something else. So first they denied that the emails were real.
And at the same time, they emailed us with a legal threat. You have to remove this file because it's intellectual property that we own. So it's not our content, but it's our content, so you have to take it down. Yeah, I don't know. But they denied allegations and said, like, this is just a leak. Someone got a Gmail account from us or something. And they started saying, like, these guys are not real hackers. They didn't steal anything. They just had a hold of a Gmail account where all the email was forwarded for some reason.
So after a week or so, the same hackers put up a telephone conversation between Media Defender and the Attorney General in New York, discussing the anti-piracy measurements over a conference call.
Yeah. So it was more than just the email that was out there. And then they said again, like, oh, they probably read the email and they got a hold of, the phone number to call to get this conference call to be a part of it. So they said, still, these guys, they're not real hackers.
So another week after that, they put up all the source code to the tools they are using to distribute their campaigns.
And that's good, because it showed also that they had some tools to crack CAPTCHAs in Pirate Bay, to automate everything on Pirate Bay, which means if you check what we're accused of in Sweden, is like we have an automated system for all of this. So we realized that they are ruining competitors' infrastructure. They pay hackers to do it. They have automated tools to break our security measurements, and they get paid to do it, and also these companies that they work for pay them to do all of this, which must be super illegal. So we reported them to the police, as I said, but it doesn't really help, because we reported to the police officer that actually was investigating the Pirate Bay case at the same time. Because it's good for us, because in Sweden you can actually file charges about anyone to any police officer. All police officers in Sweden have to take the things you tell them to actually charge someone for. But it didn't help to actually charge them for this, because, of course, it turned out the police officer started working for Warner Brothers and Universal the day after he finished the Pirate Bay case, the investigation of Pirate Bay. We found out that he actually got the job somewhere like half a year before he finished the case. He was working on the case for 2 years.
And the prosecutor stupidly say, yeah, of course it's compensation for a job well done.
Yeah.
And we think that's bribery.
Well, it's obviously a bribe, and this police officer is one of 2 police officers. He's the responsible police officer for all of the Pirate Bay investigation. He's also the only witness in the court case from the prosecutor's side. So he's, we found paper trail showing that he actually moved the day after he got his, got to know that he got a job, like he was, prepared for it, but he's screwed. He was actually fired from Universal and Warner Brothers afterwards because they didn't want to have liability, so he's now a police officer again. Yeah. So those are some of the stories. We have probably a ton more stories, really crazy stuff.
That's why I'm here tonight, I will tell you.
I didn't hear any phones ring yet, though.
Yeah.
Do you have this thing that if the phone rings during a talk, you have to buy the speaker's beer? Do you have the phone number for someone so we can call out? So now we're going to go to the more technical stuff, what the Pirate Bay does and what it is. And
yeah, and I'm the tech geek of Pirate Bay. He's more the archaeology guy. So, yeah.
so this is traffic numbers.
Yeah, these are traffic numbers. At any given time, we are sending .torrent files in about 70 megabits of only torrent files. We have 40 megabits of RSS feeds and 50 megabits of dynamic web content. And this is actually, I think it's quite a large number. Why we have so much torrent traffic for the torrent files? It's because other sites are hot-linking directly to our torrents, so they don't have to serve them themselves.
And we really think that's a good thing.
We don't mind. It's more fun to work with a server when it does some work.
And how many servers do we have now?
12 plus 18.
So around 30 servers to follow this.
Yeah. And of course, being pirates, we only use open source. These are some of the
tools we use.
Tools we have built Pirate Bay on.
And these
it doesn't say here, but of course, as I said before, Slackware is the only way to go when running Linux.
Not Ubuntu apparently, because it crashes during speeches.
Yeah.
So. But these are like essential tools that we couldn't do the Pirate Bay without. These are really essential tools. I didn't want to have Memcache up there because I think it's so obvious.
Really?
Yeah, everything is wrong.
And OpenTracker, it's the tracking software we use. It's written by Erdgas.
Yeah.
From CCC.
The Chaos Computer Club in Germany. You probably know about it. I think they're a sponsor here today, actually.
We actually got a new version from him just 2 weeks ago with the full multicast sync between servers. So all the servers has exactly the same data replicated, which allows us to handle the massive amount of traffic we get.
And it is quite massive, right? It's
we get about 50,000 successful connections a second. And that's quite a lot. Whereof,
yeah.
First.
That one first.
No,
don't go back.
Okay. Yeah, but 50,000 tracker connections a second, and that's quite a lot. It we have done some serious kernel hacking to be able to make the Linux TCP stack actually handle this, because the TCP state tables outgrew several gigs of RAM. So we manually had to edit the TCP.h to lower all the fin weight, time weight 2, fin weight 2 values to actually get rid of idle connections, to not hysterically grow the states table. So, can I go now? No? Okay. Also, we have a big problem right now, and that's interrupts. Even though we are using Intel E1000 server part, server NICs, we still get about 50% interrupt load on each server. So it's very hard to keep up with this huge amount of incoming connections and packets.
And the thing I think is the biggest problem for me is that it's not multi-threaded, right?
Yes, it is multi-threaded, kind of.
Kind of. How is it kind of?
It does something multi-threaded, like full scrapes.
Yeah, okay. So can I change now? Yes. So I want to brag a bit. Or you can brag.
You can brag.
Okay. So we mediate around 55% of all traffic. These figures are not our figures. We have no idea about this, but there are some companies that check. They measure traffic, and actually we're growing. We're taking more and more percentage of the BitTorrent traffic, which is really bad. We really encourage everybody to start their own trackers because we don't want to be the only tracker on the internet. So if you want to start a tracker, please do. Please use OpenTracker. Ask us for help. Just open the tracker. It's very important. But to be a bit impressive, so we mediate around 55% of all BitTorrent traffic. That means that people connect to us to get peers, and then they start sharing files between each other. So that generates a lot of internet traffic. So BitTorrent is estimated to be 80% of all internet traffic globally. That's huge. That means that we mediate and start over 40% of all internet traffic, the two of us. It's really a bizarre number. I have a really hard time believing this myself. But
I think Cisco owes me a CRS1.
It's really crappy looking server rack. Like, keep my right.
And we sent in the picture of the first one I showed you with the laptop and the rolls of tape for cooling and stuff.
Yeah, and then we put it up on Fireplace front page saying, please rate so we win. And we were leading that contest really heavily. Everybody voted for us. It was like, I think they had a integer value that was too small in the database. So we started rounding it quite a lot. So all of a sudden we had minus 16 million points or something. It was really, really weird. But in the end, Cisco and Syxel and some other of the sponsors, they didn't want us to win. So they refused giving out the prize if we were the winners. So they had a jury select the winner instead of having the people select the winner. So we didn't win.
Yeah, we got third or second place. So I got a $20 digital camera with 16 megs built in.
Yeah. Woohoo! Okay, so let's go to the next thing.
This is the one I wanted below the 50,000.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And
you do the pre-work next time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Of the 50,000 connections a second, 17% of them are UDP connections. And this really helped because a couple of weeks ago, I started to rewrite torrents to actually add the UDP tracker to all the torrents. And the UDP protocol is a lot nicer to the trackers because we don't need to keep TCP states. So we are currently tracking about 17% of the tracking requests are sent over UDP. And as long as this keeps growing, we will be able to cope with the growth of new peers without actually upgrading the servers. So it's quite good for us.
It's good for us, very good. And, well, that would make it easier on the next part maybe. And that's, I think, we're going to talk about now, which is this, which is a big problem. Today, the anti-pirates go to your ISP, and they start listening to all the traffic you do, and try to stop that and send out emails to people saying you're downloading illegally. And they do that by listening to tracker traffic because it's a simple HTTP request. They just listening to that and see what you're doing. So we want to encrypt all of the tracker traffic.
Yeah. So we are planning to add SSL support to the trackers, but like 40,000 connections a second, that's a lot of SSL handshakes. And And the biggest SSL engine I found so far is the one Cisco has to its 6500 series, but it costs $1 million or something, so it's not really feasible.
$1 million.
But so if anyone has tips of cheap SSL engines that can handle massive amounts of traffic, please tell us after the speech or something, because we are really looking for a good alternative to start enabling our tracking system.
And this is, we're doing some side projects, not only, this is really quick fix more than a real fix for the problem. We're also working on some other project, which is more interesting, but we're quite lazy, to be honest. So when we do stuff, it takes a really long time.
Yeah, we have to be patient.
We have to be very patient.
A year ago, we started something called Secure P2P, which aims to be the next peer-to-peer network.
Knowing us, it's going to be the next, because
Yeah,
people are going to finish other stuff.
that will take the flaws and shortcomings of BitTorrent and correct them, and also add some sort of anonymity, or at least plausible deniability, built into the protocol.
Yeah, we do
But
some
as I say, we are very lazy, so it's going to take some time.
There is some possibility of denial possibility in the open tracker today. They actually take some random IPs and just insert into the swarm to people that actually aren't sharing. I don't know if we have that activated on.
Yeah, we have. So we are injecting random IP addresses from nets already used in Tracker. And this way, the anti-peer-to-peer company just can't receive the list of peers and say, these people are file sharing, because it could be a generated IP. So they actually have to connect to each peer and download at least one piece of the torrent to be sure that they are actually sharing. Yeah. Which we're just trying to make their job as hard as possible.
And Fredrik is also working on something called IPT, and I think it's a stupid name. IPT, yes, IP coffee as well, but you can talk about it.
IPT is aimed to be a opportunistic encryption, transparent, zero configuration. I had a talk about it at the T2 conference in Helsinki 2 weeks ago, I think. You can go to the t2.fi website and download the slides if you're interested in knowing more about it. And anyone with suggestions, we are very interested in hearing what you have to say, because we're not all that good in encryption and stuff, but we have the basic ideas down. Now we just need to figure a way to implement it. We have some proof of concept code, but it just uses XOR as encryption. So it's just to show that, yeah, it can work, but we don't have anything even close to being finished yet. And the reason for this is to protect against passive surveillance. Like the FRA law in Sweden that says we're going to listen in to all our neighbors' internet traffic, because we are a big hub in Europe. And hello to the FRA people, I know you're here.
Yeah, there are at least 2 people. There he is.
Yeah.
He's in the blue shirt watching us already. Yeah, so FRA in Sweden, they're monitoring, they want to monitor all the traffic in Sweden, and essentially because they think they can find terrorists online. But as you all know, most probably know that Iceland is a terrorist country because they're poor. Everybody's a terrorist now. So you have a lot of work. But I think that's it when it comes to IPT. We could probably talk about it for an hour or something, but we don't want to do that today. This is more general talk.
Yeah.
So essentially what we want to say is this. I love this picture as well. I like funny pictures. What we've said today is basically file sharing will not be stopped. Even though you could maybe do like FRA, be stupid and try to monitor all the traffic on the internet, it will be encrypted. It will always find its way around. If enough problems arise, it will probably be a separate network instead. Funny studies in the UK show that most people in the UK share CDs or use hard drives. Kids in school actually burn CDs and share them with each other. 98% of people share offline, and only like 25% in the UK share online. So the biggest problem is not the internet. The biggest problem is with the media industry, which is, they can't grasp the concept and try to embrace the ideas and ideals of the internet. And that's why nobody is going to be sad when they go away, I think.
Just have to wait for the next generation of vice presidents in the organizations.
Yeah. But I don't want to go too much into the ideology because it's going to take another 2 hours or something. I have a funny clip, which is, it says more about us than everything else. This is from BBC World, I think. Oops.
Great.
We're going to do it again. Sound on? Can we go?
Are there any other Swedish laws that you would break because you think you have the right to do so? I think we're the same there. We like to break the speed limit.
There's your cue. So I think that's it. And if you have any questions, please ask. No questions? Come on.
None at all.
None at all. Not even FRA. IFB, where are you? You're here somewhere. Oh, one guy. And which guy? Hi.
Because there is copyright, we really got a problem.
Sorry?
You are defending not the copyright, the not copyright.
Yeah.
But how do you think about that? If there is no copyright, how should the content will be made? Is it just an open source community going to be like movies, or do you more think like we're going to pay tax for copyrights, or what's your opinion about it?
Well,
Did you see the last Bond movie? Did you happen to notice which car he was driving, which cell phone he was using?
Yes.
I think they can get funding from other directions than just direct sales. And also there's a bit of a difference when it comes to the movie industry and when it comes to the music industry. In the music industry, the artists don't make their money out of selling CDs. The record labels or the record companies actually do. But it's like 10% of the earnings from the artists. If you're successful in selling CDs, you would make 10% of your profits from that. And that's a variable profit. You can manage without that. And all studies actually show that the music industry, or at least the artists, make more money out of peer-to-peer than they do on selling CDs. So it's good for them with peer-to-peer and file sharing. And I think in the movie industry, it's there's no studies showing that actually it's hurting their sales. And also, there is this whole thing about a new industry rising. It doesn't mean that the whole industry still has to make money, which is a very controversial thing to say, I guess. But I don't care about if they make money in the future or not. If they're not needed anymore, why should we pay for it? And that's also why I'm against the flat rate system, which is give them, pay $20 a month and download for free. Why should we pay for an industry if they cannot make their own money? It's against all basic rules when it comes to making money. I don't want to pay a stupid industry money for doing nothing, which is essentially what they do. They take money from their artists. That's it.
I agree with that. In Holland, we also have something like a copy fee on CDs and DVDs, and they also started to talk about to put it on hard drives, and it actually made you already pay the copyright fee on a disc for only 20 cents, and it making it actually legal to download and put it on a disc. So I think there are some more creative ways to.
Yeah, the monetizing problem is not really a problem. It's a problem for the industry, but it's not a problem for us. To be honest, I don't care that much about the industry, that I want to help them. They can be creative. They have so many people employed. They can try to make money instead of saying, no, we're like children, and if we don't get it our way, we're not going to have it anyway. And the internet doesn't care about if they get it their way. The internet just say, if you have it our way, or you don't get it at all. So,
Thanks.
Any more questions?
Hi. I think I actually know some of the people actually at Media Centre.
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Do they actually still have a job?
I think it might not be media defender, but there was this one guy I used to know. Actually, I bailed him out of prison actually, which on balance now I believe is probably a mistake. I should have just let him there to rot. Is there an ongoing arms race between sort of like the P2P community and these companies? Because I'm sure Media Defender aren't the only one. I mean, there are other people out there who are making good money out of this.
There's a lot of these companies out there.
What sort of tactics do they sort of resort to? Has anyone actually tried to directly kind of
He
go
knows
after
this
you?
better than anyone.
Well, some of them, as I said, have sent PIs after us, checking out where we're doing, where the servers are located, stuff like that. And but I think one of them actually got a prize from a security firm, what it would cost to break into our facility and steal the servers. So it's like,
That's part of our court case, actually, those papers.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting.
yeah, so they are resorting to some weird measurements at times.
And technically, I guess that's what you're after.
Yeah, I mean that's what I find really interesting is the technical arms race.
Yeah, well, of course, everything's going to be more and more encrypted.
But I think you want to know the tactics they use today.
Oh, the tactics, they are usually just trying to gather as much information as possible about users, like sniffing the tracker traffic or torrent downloads. They are also connecting to the peer-to-peer network and downloading.
And they try to, not DDoS, but basically they want to connect as many peers to overload the systems, which they do quite, I think they quite managed to do it quite well on the smaller trackers because they don't have enough servers to actually cope with the amount of connections.
Do you see any kind of attacks, actually direct attacks against the
Depends on what you
themselves?
depends on what you mean by an attack. If I would drop all my firewall rules on the tracker, I would get thousands of connections a second just from them. But usually I'm pretty good at finding the nets they are using and firewall them. That's a problem for them because they have to change IP addresses constantly. But usually they are easy to spot which one of them, and sometimes they even put the correct information in the area in the right database. Why? But yeah, so they are quite easily tracked and blocked.
And it's so funny because I remember when Media Defender was at their height, it was so fun to read their email afterwards because I know that we found some networks and they had so much trouble finding new networks, getting new allocated IPs. So when we blocked them for it, we were just going through the traffic and saying, oh, that network needs to block that and that and that. Then it had to work for a week to get new networks, like actually working, sending paperwork, faxing papers, and then we just block them again. So it's really hard work to do.
So you don't see people trying to, like root your servers or your routers or anything like this?
Well, probably there's a lot of attacks on it. I haven't.
Yeah, usually I don't. I just see DDoSes in the graphs. Oh, that's an extra 50 megabits. I wonder where they came from.
Yeah.
But usually they don't affect all that much.
No. And I don't think they go after. Maybe they try hacking us or whatever. But those people, there are probably people that own half of our boxes or whatever. We don't really care as long as they're nice people. But I don't think they have any, that they have any way into our servers or bypass our system. So
I think the closest thing I know that we had for a security breach is again, Debian user generated SSH key. Use Slackware, nothing bad ever happened.
but we had one
SQL injection.
Yeah, that was your fault. So I can blame you for that. We had one SQL injection on Pirate Bay, and someone got the hold of the database, and I think they were quite angry because all the passwords and email addresses were actually encrypted with AES. So we had that extra line of defense behind the database. So yeah, we try not to have too much information about users anyhow. We don't log any downloads. We don't log your usage on the tracker system. We essentially just keep your...
we log the IP address for 12 hours for spam protection. That's
Something
how
like that.
related.
So yeah, there is not a lot of information to gain from us anyhow.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. anymore.